So my green and happy space is being in this garden, because for many reasons it's hugely connected with Horatio and his legacy and the movement for change that he has created as a result of his young ideas. So I feel very connected to him when I'm here, but also to the many, many patients who I've talked to over the years who have told me that this has been the thing that's kept them going. This magical garden has enabled them to find the strength from somewhere to be able to go forward after this type of life-changing injury. So Horatio was my eldest son, and he wanted to be a doctor, and he volunteered here in the Spinal Injury Centre in Salisbury. And it was his ideas and his research that started off this movement. He thought that patients would really benefit from a garden. He was tragically killed when he was 17. He went on a trip to Svalbard, and his group was attacked by a polar bear. And Horatio tried to defend his friends, and in that he lost his life. And in the aftermath of that absolute terribleness, people knew that Horatio had been trying to get a garden going, and we as a family had been trying to organise this. And the spinal unit said, let's call it Horatio's Garden. And suddenly people started to donate, and we had an extraordinary fund that we could then create not only a legacy to him, but we could, it was a gift really that he gave us to make a difference on his behalf for his life. At that stage we didn't know it was going to be to move on to be able to do this in all spinal injury centres, but it now has a huge momentum behind it as we see the impact that this has had. And I know Horatio would just be overwhelmed, really thrilled that every day his ideas as a young schoolboy are making a difference to so many people. So we have learned from our patients are the things that make a difference when you're in hospital for months. And the really vital elements that people find are water. So the sound of water is incredibly calming and a real contrast to the noises in the hospital ward. We also find that patients love the textures of the plants, and that's why we have very highly designed perennial plants that bring in all sorts of different textures to people to feel, to look at and to experience. And we'll often put them at wheelchair height as well, and with different layering, so different heights, so that whether you're in a hospital bed or a wheelchair, you can experience this garden, or walking, experience this garden in any position that you may be. We find that colour is incredibly important, and this is backed with all sorts of scientific evidence that different vibrant colours can really have a direct impact on our mood. So another advantage of having a real perennial garden, having a garden that's planted with bulbs, that all year round you're going to have different colours for people to explore and get that serotonin natural fix, which is so important. As well as greens, and lots of varieties of green, and green is probably the most calming colour. So we need that too, because people are using our gardens for all sorts of different reasons. It may be coming to terms with things and having a quiet, calm moment on their own. But it may be as well having a happy time and having a time with friends and family and normality, and the colour and being surrounded by colour will help with that too. We have trees, beautiful trees in the gardens, all sorts of different varieties of trees, both usual varieties that make people feel connected with their landscape, but also unusual species. And we find that people love them for their differences through the year, whether it's the amelanchias bursting into bud, or whether it's the beech holding on to its leaves through the winter. They love hearing the sound of the rustle in the trees and seeing the birds in the trees, of course. Biodiversity is really important, and really important in a hospital site where often we are the only green and garden area on a site. Naturally, the insects and the birds will find our gardens because they're gardened organically, and it really shows what a small space can do to enhance wildlife. So we look at all the different sorts of birds. We have things to support the insects and the bees. We have hummingbird hawk moths, as we've just seen one in here, that are attracted to the garden because of the way that we look after it and the way we keep the seed heads up. So it becomes a sanctuary, not just for the people, not just for the plants, but for all of the different species of animals and insects and birds who inhabit this space. A sense of safety is very important, so although we may not have a beautiful Victorian garden wall here in the hospital, we will have that sense of safety, with hedges around, and it's a secure space for people who are exploring when they're quite vulnerable, having been through this type of injury. And also, everything is smooth, so patients can easily get around on the paths, which we have a very low tolerance of any kind of slope at all. Everywhere is accessible to anyone, so there's no challenges or difficult areas here. You can use any part of the garden on your own, and sometimes this is the first place that people have been able to just have a few minutes on their own. And that can be really, really important when you've been through the sort of trauma that our patients have. So we learn from patients about what works for them, and people like to be sitting in the garden feeling that they're in a little nook surrounded by plants. It's almost like a garden room made of plants, as well as garden pods, so people can feel in the winter that they're able to get away from everyone, have a quiet time, but it's warm and cosy as well. Access to nature is so important for all of us, whatever age we are, whatever state of our health. It is a brilliant tonic. There's evidence that supports that, but we all know at times, and I know personally, at times when having gone through, bereavement, the only thing that I could find that gave me calm and gave me solace and gave me an opportunity to sort of try to think bigger and find meaning in what I was trying to cope with was nature. So seeing views, sitting under a tree, feeling something that was bigger than a man-made thing was so important. And we know that for people who are struggling with post-traumatic stress, with life-changing injuries, grief, bereavement, separation, all of the multitude of things that we all sadly have to face during our lives, end-of-life care, that being in a garden environment, a natural environment, is something which will give us that natural burst of cortisol and dopamine. Physiological responses to the plants just happen naturally and make us feel better, whatever the circumstances. Even after a stressful day at work or a difficult time with the children. The children benefit from it, we all benefit from it. 5 minutes outside is really the nature fix that we need.